everyone. This is Karen Grace Clark, Program Manager for Gold Lactation Online Conference. I'm here with Fiona Lang-Sharp, our Public Relations Coordinator and Master of Ceremonies. Today we listened in and participated in a couple of presentations called the Gold Lactation Alumni Presentations with both Edith Kernerman and Dr. Kathleen Kendall-Tackett. These presentations were on the deleterious effects of timing, scheduling, measuring, and recording of infant feeding, and also the neuropsychological effects of sleep training and its impact on breastfeeding. Fiona and I want to share some of the highlights of our day with you, and as such I'm going to ask Fiona to jump in and comment on some of the things that we learned at the presentation by Dr. Kathleen Kendall-Tackett on infant sleep training, which apparently, and I think you'll agree with me, Fiona, is a really hot topic that mothers are talking about and paying to go through programs on. What do you think, Fiona?
Well, first of all, you know, what a better person to be talking about this topic than Kathleen Kendall-Tackett. Totally inspiring, scientifically sound, you know, in all her research. So, you know what, this was great because we really need core evidence to take back to our mothers and really good science, because that's what initially, you know, we started hearing about was, you know, sleep training was based on science. You know, so what she did in her talk is she took us right back to the beginning. And what I mean by the beginning is that she started talking about child rearing and really how, you know, child rearing and breastfeeding come together. So you can't always change, you know, how a mother has set out to raise her child, but you can certainly influence and talk about the science. So going back to the beginning was she started talking about over 100 years ago. She said even 150 years ago, think about what happened, you know, and it was really the Industrial Revolution, and then that was on the heels of the Scientific Revolution, which really caused this effect in the changes of how we did things. So isn't it fascinating? And this is the question I have for you now, Karen Grace. You're going to like this. I want to know what you think about, you know, how we're always talking about, you know, evidence-based and, you know, this research to this and research to that. But do you think that we've started to limit ourselves because we have based so much of it on science? You know, because it's the oxymoron of, you know, we've gone so scientific that we've stopped thinking about behavioral choices and how this is affecting our babies, and particularly in sleep training. What do you think?
I totally agree. I think that's a really interesting observation that you've made. I never really would have thought about it quite in that way, but you do make a really good point, Fiona. And I think as I'm listening to both of the presentations today, you know, the one by Edith Kernerman about the effects of timing, scheduling, measuring, and recording on infant feeding, and then the neuropsychological effects of infant sleep training, which are kind of, you know, they go sort of hand in hand, because I think the reason why parents do these things are coming from the same place. And as I was listening to both of these presentations and then asking, you know, the delegate questions, and then even just hearing your question now about, you know, the science, you know, what I notice, you know, from the mothers is that one of the reasons why they cotton on to, you know, why they engage in and why they're so willing to schedule time, measure, sleep train, you know, get their babies organized, make sure that they fit into this box, into that box, and can check off all these charts, why they're downloading these apps, you know, in record numbers, is because they're afraid. I think mothers are afraid. They're afraid they're not doing it right. They're afraid they're going to harm their baby. You know, they're afraid that they're not a good mother. And I think the aspect of science and doing it right has reared its ugly head and is basically giving the message to the mothers of, you don't know what you're talking about. You're not good enough.
Exactly. And one of the quotes that I heard Kathy say or talk about was that essentially it's overriding mothers' responses to their baby's cues. And so they're left with a situation where, you know, their intuitive behavior is being, of course, undermined. That's a word we've heard for, you know, for a long time. But with the sleep training, it sort of has its own entity, I find, right now, in terms of but we've given another product. Look at it as a product, okay? So we've provided mothers with another solution or product that's going to help their baby, you know, sleep better. And once we all get more sleep, then, you know, we'll feel better. Because isn't that what new mothers say, you know, immediately after they, you know, in the first day 3 is always the crisis day, right? We can agree on that because basically they're tired, they're exhausted. You know, they've been up for several hours now. You know, breastfeeding is, you know, sometimes it's going okay, but often, you know, they're running into a few after effects of the birth, and so, you know, they're trying to figure out what they're doing. Often there's been a lot of a mixed message going on, but nonetheless, this is, I think, that's the turning point for a lot of mothers at that point where they start to feel undermined. So perhaps even those mothers that started out saying, I'm not going to do any of that sleep training. I want to be more of that attachment parent, you know, where I'm going to hold my baby. But the desperation starts to sink in, and then, you know, they're looking outside of themselves for something to fix. So on that point, I mean, this is all behavioral, right? So how do we then come in and change that behavioral? Because this is one of the things that, you know, Kathleen Kendall-Tackett was talking a lot about, in a sense that we need to really look at the behavior of women so that we can tap into them. But unfortunately, the intuitive behavior has started to, you know, be non-responsive because of the fatigue. At what point do you think a lactation consultant can come in and change those aspects? What can she do?
Well, I think the first thing that we can do is just tell mothers the truth. First of all, you know, we need to help them understand that they can trust themselves. We need to help them understand what normal infant behavior is. You know, we need to help them understand what infant signs are, you know, signs of feeding, signs of tiredness, and, you know, how they can respond to those things in the most healthiest way for themselves and their family. You know, and I think that if we can help them feel confident and then give them the truth, then we're going to be covering it as much as possible from dealing with the mothers. But there's another side of it, and that is working with other healthcare professionals. And I know that, you know, any, you know, healthcare professional in any capacity, when there are other healthcare professionals working also with, you know, that client or patient in a similar way that are maybe part of the team, but when there's not cohesiveness on that team, that can cause difficulties. So I would say also that what would help as lactation consultants is then to maybe do a little bit more advocacy and training for the doctors and nurses, not just the information itself, like what these presentations have, you know, in terms of the education, but also to learn how to work better together as a team and to work respectfully together. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, you know, the deterioration is, you know, is around us, and, you know, it's not one shoe fits all, and I think this is one of the problems, you know, as a reminder, is we're not, you know, even our parenting that essentially is interchanged with our breastfeeding, you know, has this huge effect on where we're going to reach for and how things. So many variables, you know, and you've got to have team players, and you've got to be honest. I love that. I love the way that you opened that up, because I truly believe that, you know, honesty and transparency really are the key to so many things. You know, let's be honest here. This is bloody exhausting, you know, as we would say in England, like you're exhausted or you're knackered, you know, so this is what happens. Anyways, I want to get back to a couple of things that Kathy was mentioning. These things just struck me, and the reason I'm going to plug her now, because I want people to listen. I really want people to listen to this. I really do. So I'm going to plug a few things she said. I'm just going to throw them out there, and then I'll pass it off to you, and you can talk about you know, talk about Edith. Okay, so this is what she said. I love these things. So do you remember, you know, really we got rid of midwives so we could get rid of the old wives' tales. I mean, essentially that's what happened when the Industrial Revolution came into play. And then she said, you know, high tech became better than low tech. You know, the introduction of formula was primarily the motive for the American Academy of Pediatricians to, you know, to form in terms of, you know, getting the science right for it. What are some of the other things? She said, you can't, this is a quote from her, you cannot divorce child rearing from breastfeeding. One always affects the other. What were the other things she said? Science as a savior. This was something that, can you imagine, you know, like we didn't live through those times in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, but you can just imagine, you know, this happening, you know, science as a savior, you know, where the ideas could improve on nature, but really, you know, they became, that's what really became potent in our, you know, in our century, and it toxified, you know, what happened, because everybody started going, ha ha, you know, it's the science, you know, so it's got to be so much better. And finally, the last quote I'm gonna talk a little bit about is what she said about Kangaroo Care, and this was a wow moment for me. I mean, I knew this already, but wait till you hear what she was talking about. She said Kangaroo Care would never have been tried in the United States. Kangaroo Care would never have been tried in the United States. And I thought, wow, that is so true. It was, you know, it was first developed, you know, in, I believe it was in Colombia. Is that right? Do you remember? I think it was there. So it was where they had no equipment. And so she said it only would have been tried in a country where, you know, they had no other resources. They never would have taken Kangaroo Care and put it into an industrial Western culture to try it out to see if it actually worked. Because they're so far removed from, you know, from that type of behavior. We had to take it from another country that is on, you know, on the brink of survival all the time when it comes to their children. So, you know, I just thought it was amazing. So, yeah. But one last thing, I just got to say, the one last thing I'm going to say now, okay, I promise I'll give you time to talk. But I wanted to say that it's those cortisol levels that are the most striking part of her talk. So when an infant cries, their cortisol level rises. Now, most people know this today. So I'd say a lot of parents don't, but I think, you know, lactation consultants know this. Cortisol levels, they start to rise when a baby cries, and that causes stress. And now we know that that causes long-term problems and disease as well. So if an infant's crying all the time, you know, no doubt that's going to cause long-term problems. We know that for sure. But what struck me as being so important and valid was the fact that it kills brain cells. It kills the neurons in the brain. So, you know, it's not something I would perhaps use as a line, as an opener for a family, but I thought I'm going to hold on to that. I'm going to keep that in my pocket and use it, you know, as a point of topic to inform families about these very important hormone called cortisol that has long-term effects on our infants, and especially when we're using sleep training. So yeah, anyways, I'm going to pass it off to you now, KG. I want to hear more of what you found important in Edith Kernerman's talk.
Well, you know, before I do that, as you're talking and, you know, sharing your thoughts about what we learned today from Dr. Kathleen Kendall-Tackett on infant sleep training, I'm just nodding my head up and down, up and down, up and down, going, yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, and to us, you know, we've been around this work for a long time, and you know, we are sort of the choir, you know. So for, you know, Kathleen and Edith as our speakers today are, of course, preaching to us as the choir, but there's a lot of healthcare professionals who do take these presentations who are learning for the first time, and you know, those are the ones we really want to impact, but even more so the mothers. And there's so many mothers, like I said, that who are afraid and who just don't trust themselves. And you know, as we were talking about this, Fiona, I was, you know, remembering an experience from my own life when my children were very little. I was saying to you earlier that I feel like mothers don't trust themselves, and they don't trust their babies. They don't know what their babies are telling them, and they don't know how to learn the signs. They don't know normal infant, you know, development and how babies should be growing and what they should be doing at any given stage. And they certainly don't know their own instincts. And science, you know, has come, you know, even the medical establishment per se has come and kind of robbed mothers of their ability to just be mothers. You know, but what came to mind was when I had my second child. And, you know, I was one of these, you know, quasi-hippie sort of moms where, you know, even with my first child, I had, you know, a home birth with midwives and whatnot. I tried to be crunchy in my life, Fiona. I really did. I tried to bake the hemp cookies and, you know, sew and do all that. And it didn't work for me. Like, I tried really hard, but I always came back to wanting to wear makeup and showing a little cleavage, stuff like that. So anyways, I just wanted to qualify. I just wanted to qualify that home birthing and midwifery is not for the hippie, but I tried really hard. And anyways, my point was that, you know, by the time I had my second child, you know, under 2 years, so I had 2 kids in 2 years, and, you know, this was back in Ontario, you know, in the Toronto area, Ontario, Canada, and I remember, you know, having this baby and this toddler, and after the baby was born, you know, within about a week or so, I dutifully went to my doctor's office and had a good relationship with my doctor, you know, and the baby, you know, my daughter, was weighed and measured and tested, and everything was fine, and then at the end of our visit, you know, my doctor was like, yeah, so when you come, you know, next week or whenever I was supposed to come next, like whatever their well baby checks were back then, I don't remember what it was, every 2 weeks or something. And I looked at her and I said, yeah, no, I'm not coming. She's like, I beg your pardon? I was like, yeah, no, I have a toddler and I have a baby. I have 2 breasts, I make milk, I'm experienced, and I know that my baby is doing fine. I'm not coming to your office every 2 weeks just so that you can weigh, measure, and record and schedule my baby. I said it's not necessary, and I'm not doing that to my toddler. You know, I'm not doing that. And she just looked at me and she's like, well, if it were anybody else, I would be worried. But because it's you, it's fine. And I'm not saying that because that has anything to do with me. Why I'm saying that is because that was my doctor saying, I don't trust mothers in my care. And that's a problem. That is one of the reasons why mothers are afraid and why they want to record, schedule, train. Okay, yes, we're exhausted. But what I was saying earlier, Fiona, about truth and about telling mothers the truth, well, we know, and science actually tells us this, that mothers who sleep with their babies and those babies who have access to breastfeeding all night long, those mothers actually get more sleep. And so here's the truth. If there's any mothers listening to, you know, this radio show of ours, or any healthcare professionals that need a gem to take to their next class or their next consultation, it's this. Remind those mothers that you're working with, or if you're a mom, remember that even if you pump your milk at night or some other time so that somebody can give baby a bottle so you can sleep more, or even if you sleep train, or even if, you know, you are going through this pattern to try and get baby to fit into some kind of schedule. When babies wake up at night, mom wakes up too. It's not like we're not going to wake up. You'll wake up. Especially if there's a bottle in the fridge and somebody else is feeding the bottle, you're going to wake up because your body wakes you up. And if you hear that baby crying because somebody else is heating up a bottle, or somebody else is going to baby, or you're trying to ignore baby's crying, you're going to wake up anyways. You're not sleeping. Would you agree that that's the truth, Fiona?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think it's, you know, I mean, for every mother that we're talking to, it's, you know, we're trying to, you're talking to them at such a difficult time. Let's face it, you know, it's like anything. And so, you know, you really are wanting to explore many of these things and lay it out there, you know. So it has effect. It changes even the mother's thought pattern, you know, because Kathleen was talking about, you know, the effects of, you know, what happens to the mother at this point, that a lot of depressed mothers fall into this somewhat trap, you know, of wanting to do, you know, sleep training. So I would say that, you know, absolutely we need to, you know, be taking that time and, you know, that intricate, you know, time with our mothers to just, you know, really be spending, you know, the sort of spelling out the effects, you know, that they could be looking at long term, and focusing in on the fact that this is a short-term problem, you know, and in resolving this, the payout is so huge, you know, that it's magnified. And that's what I say to a lot of my moms, you know, this is just a short time, you know, hang in there. That's the encouragement that I'm giving them. I'm trying not to focus too far ahead for them because that's too far to look at. So just really zoning in and focusing in on those, you know, those one day at a time even, you know, and the effect and that can have for them. But these mothers, they're certainly, you know, they're depleted. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think Edith, in her presentation, about timing, scheduling, and measuring, and all of that, and the effects that has on babies, she jokingly said she's made a new bumper sticker, and what it is babies are inconvenient. Get over it. And she was a bit tongue-in-cheek there, kind of a little bit sarcastic, but she does have a good point. But let's spin that the other side of the coin. And let's look at that in a way that doesn't sound so harsh, because some people might hear that message and not really appreciate that message. But this is really what that message is about. You have a baby. That baby is going to change your life, and it should. As a matter of fact, you will enjoy your baby that much more if you dive in, instead of create a wall, instead of try to organize, instead of schedule, measure, train. That's another truth message that I would like to leave everybody with, whether you're working with families or whether you are a young family, dealing with baby care. I would say dive in. Because when you dive in, you connect. And when you connect with your baby, you feel connected as a mother, you feel connected as a family, and then you can really enjoy that moment and enjoy learning who your baby is and learning what your baby needs. And when you meet other people's needs, that makes us feel good. I think one thing, too, that Edith said that was really important is she talked about touch points. And I believe she was quoting somebody else, but I didn't write down who she was quoting in her talk. Maybe you remember Fiona, but she talked about the touch points and how a baby needs to feel connected to mama. Now, when we're specifically talking about breastfeeding, this is why we know that positions in which mom is slightly reclined, or in which baby and mom's whole bodies are, parallel to each other, and they're in very, very close contact, babies relax into that moment much more than they do so in sort of positions where baby's spine is perpendicular to mom's instead of parallel. But those touch points are really important, because as soon as a baby is worn by mom or is on mom's body, you can see that whole baby just go, ah. And when we allow baby to be in that habitat and we don't worry so much about all of the charts, all of the measurements, all of the weights, and we don't worry about having to train them to be a certain person, but we can just, I think everybody is so much healthier and happier in that moment.
Oh, absolutely. I think that, in terms of what Edith was talking about, it's quoted by Brazelton, is the author who talks a lot about touch points. And it's totally true that, if the mother's relaxed, even if, say there was a situation with, flat nipples or something, okay? So let's say it was we had a mixed match of, mouth and nipple, okay? And it really was a true situation. But if that mother was totally relaxed, you could see how even her teachability, even teaching her would be so much easier. And you wouldn't fall into the trap of, having to do all those interventions in the first place, that Edith was talking about, that then has a consequential, impact, long term as well when you start, timing or, weighing the baby all the time. But if you have a mother who has an ordinary situation, otherwise ordinary, but they just need some coaching with breastfeeding. But the mother, and this I see a lot, and I'm sure you do too, KG, is, when we see those mothers that are already stressed, they don't even know what they're stressed about, but they, they come into motherhood stressed, and they're panicky, and they're finding it difficult to relate to motherhood, and so even teaching them, just, move into your baby, hold the baby closer, just talk in soothing tones, or, it becomes it's abstract to them. It's confusing. They can't tap into those resources in their brains, because, well, for a lot of it, I mean, they've been indoctrinated with, a culture that has told them that, really they've lost all sense of, of how to be a mother, in terms of, there's so many books on the market that, and they've read at least 5 of them before they've had children, and now they're completely confused. And in order to go back to the basics and tap into their instinctual behavior becomes very complicated and sometimes causes a lot of anxiety as well.
For sure, for sure. Edith was taking us through, a number of different case studies and some things that she's seen directly in her clinic and in her consultations with some of the parents that she's worked with and some of the extreme situations. And I would recommend that that everybody listen. If they haven't registered yet, they can still do so on our website at goldlactation.com. But one of the things she was talking about was this family who had brought in this feeding log. So from the moment the baby was born, practically they had an exact chart of this is when the baby fed, this is what side baby fed on, this is how long baby fed at the breast, and and it looked like baby was feeding tons and tons and tons. And even though they were bringing baby to the breast that often, the fact is the baby really wasn't removing milk. And that's the key here. And Edith was saying, look, if we do not show a mother how to know if the baby is drinking from the breast, but rather we just take a weight of the baby before the feed or after the feed or even once a day, and we say, well, the baby's not gaining enough weight, blah, 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 that's not going to help. That's not giving the mother the skills she needs, which is to tell her, how do you know baby is drinking from the breast? I mean, we're talking about in the early days here, when we don't have a month worth of, a weekly weight or, 3 months worth of every other week or something to look for a pattern. When we just have a couple of days that we're going on and suddenly everybody's panicked because, oh my gosh, it looks like baby's not growing. Really? We just need to show the mom how to determine whether or not the baby is drinking. And then the other thing she pointed out, and I think we'll just end with this, Fiona, because our time is coming to an end now, but one thing she pointed out which was really interesting, and I would like everybody to listen very carefully. She said the evidence or emphasis on volume of infant breastfeeding, in other words, how much a baby should be drinking, okay, every day or over the course of 24 hours. So the volume of infant feeds and the recommendation based on what we believe that infants should be drinking on a 24-hour basis is not based on breastfeeding at all, but rather it's based on milk given by alternate methods. So milk that has been expressed by a pump or hand expressed, put into some other vessel like a syringe or a bottle, and then given to baby. And it's from that we determined, oh, this means that baby should drink this much in a 24-hour period. How do we really know what any one baby should be drinking in any 24-hour period of time? That was her take-home message, or one of her many take-home messages, and that was one thing that really impacted me, and I'm going to make sure that I share that with parents that I work with in my practice as well. Fiona, it's been wonderful chatting with you, as always, and I can't wait until we get to do this again.
Awesome. Thank you again. It's been fun, as usual.
And everyone listening today, I will remind you once again that you can head over to goldlactation.com and you can register to view these alumni presentations. We have the deleterious effects of timing, scheduling, measuring, and recording of infant feeding, and the neuropsychological effects of sleep training and its impacts on breastfeeding, as well as a bonus recording from Gold Lactation 2013 that occurred last spring. Pamela Morrison gave a presentation on Back to the Future, HIV and breastfeeding today, and what the impacts of that are. So I recommend everybody to have a listen there. And once again, thank you for listening to us today, and we hope to see you online. Bye-bye.